Hey, kiddos. Welcome back to SELFWIFE, the podcast where I center myself in my own life for the first time because I want to be happy. I want to enjoy the rest of my time here on planet Earth because it's fleeting, folks, and we all know that. And I'm ready to have a good time. Thanks for tuning in. Today is the first day I am recording on the same day I'm going to be releasing, so that's new. I'm trying a new little backdrop. Just keeping things moving for you guys. I'm on the move. I'm bringing you with me. And also, I kind of have a little bit of a desk set up in front of me, but you can't see it, but I'm moving toward you being able to see it. I love podcast sets where there's a desk. I would love to be at a desk. Also, you guys, if I had a podcast studio, it would be so cute. I've been reminiscing about my first solo apartment, and God, I made that place immaculate. It was so fucking cute. And I look forward to being able to have spaces to myself again. And having things that are mine that make me happy and that come from me is the whole purpose of this show, and also has a lot to do with what I want to talk about today, which is chosen family, the family that you choose. I know without chosen family, I would be out of here. It would have been out of here a long time ago. Chosen family has saved my life time and time again. I have sought out and found a lot of chosen family since I started really working on healing mid to late 20s. Since then, I've had so many chosen mothers and just people that, it's deeper than a friend. It's deeper than just somebody you're gonna call when you want to go to the movies. It's, people that you can call no matter what you're going through, and they're not going to judge you and they're not going to make the problem worse. That's chosen family. And two members of my chosen family that I can honestly say have changed who I am and been there with me for the past, I think it's been maybe 13 years now, but specifically this past year have just shown me a new level of love and grace. And that's my friend Rose and her mom, Roberta, who I call Robbie. They are from Seattle, Washington, and are the reason that I spent so much time in Seattle, Washington this past year. If you've been following along, that's where I ran away to first. I stayed in Capitol Hill in Rose's friend Travis's house because he needed a house sitter for an entire month right when I wanted to leave Los Angeles and go be by myself somewhere, but didn't know where that was. And then Rose was like, oh, Travis needs a house sitter for a month. You can go stay at their house. And thus started 6 or 7 months of me rejuvenating in Washington and falling in love with the trees in the Pacific Northwest, which I've posted about endlessly. And also being privy to a type of just love and respect and support that I honestly have never experienced before in the home setting, because I got to stay with Robbie for an extended period of time, and it changed me from the inside out. And I just want to tell you about a little bit of it because it has been, on one hand, when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, this is so simple. It's just love and respect and patience from people that you offer that to as well. But on the other hand, it's been so rare in my life. I haven't had, the opportunities that have opened up for me this past year for healing have been so incredible and immense. And this is definitely one of them. And I just want to tell you a couple of the things that I've experienced now within the past year that have set me up for what I want for the rest of my life. And it really started when I went to Robbie's house with Rose to visit and then didn't end up leaving for like 6 months. Okay, let me set the scene for you. First of all, Rose and I have been friends for, like I was saying, like 13 years or so. Met her through another friend who I don't even speak to anymore, actually, back in Los Angeles. And Rose and I, immediately, we just sort of like recognized each other and we became fast friends. And she just stood out to me because she was so brilliant and so verbose and so worldly and cultured and knowledgeable and very warm and beautiful. And I just loved everything about her. And we got closer and got to know each other. And she really just revealed herself to be like a solid person in my life who cared about my well-being and who saw the good in me. And it was something that I really needed because I'm very used to being like hyper criticized. You've heard about my background and the types of relationships that I'm drawn to. And Rose has always sort of been like an antidote to that. She always makes me feel better about myself. She always reminds me of my own power. She has been by my side through so many relationships that make me cry constantly. And she's always right there, reminding me of who I am, saying the exact right words, and lifting me up so that I can actually like she's the type of friend that like helps me extract the lessons from my life rather than just lay around and feel like a heap of shit. She's like the friend that's going to be like, okay, but let's talk about this is related to that other thing, right? And you knew this, and therefore this is actually about what you've been working on. She's so good at recentering and filling me back up. And everybody who knows her feels this way. Like, this is just like the type of person that she is. And I'm so, so blessed to have her in my life. She also, when we met, I was sharing an apartment in Los Feliz, gorgeous apartment with a friend, and it was seeping me of all of my resources. I was thinking recently, this is when I was a public school teacher, I was thinking recently about the concept of living paycheck to paycheck. When I was a teacher, I didn't even live paycheck to paycheck. I lived paycheck to 1 week before paycheck. Part of that was because I put myself through school. So my student loan payments were exorbitant every single month. And I was living in Los Feliz, and I have no support from my family. I, support myself completely. And so it was a lot. It was hard. I didn't like living paycheck to 1 week before paycheck. And because my salary wasn't going to go up exponentially, eventually I started to be like, I don't think I can afford, as gorgeous as this apartment is. And I loved hosting over there. Oh my God. That's when I started a writer's group, and I just like gathered people in the gorgeous open living room with the giant window and the storybook tree right out, watching over all of us as we read our prose to one another. It was a really beautiful place and in a really gorgeous location, and also was like $1,875 a month. And as a teacher at that time, I was making maybe a little bit over $3,000 a month. Okay. And yes, that is fully credentialed. That is with a Bachelor of Arts in Education. That is with being tenured. Teachers are very, very, very underpaid. And it is a sucker position for that reason. Although there are teachers elsewhere who make more, but not in Monrovia School District. And then also just, having that high of rent when my income was that low was just, it was seeping me for all I was worth. And I remember complaining to Rose about that and just not, I can't even live my own life because my salary is so low. And she said she lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, also in Los Angeles, pretty nearby in Hollywood. And she said, you can come move into my apartment, split the rent with me. It'll be like, I think it was like we each were paying $450 for rent. It was like a very cheap place. She said, it's a 1-bedroom, but your job requires you to be up at certain hours. I will move into the living room and sleep on the fold out couch. That will be my bedroom from now on. You take my bedroom. We'll have my friend Gabe build an extra closet so you have space for your clothes, because that's always like what I have most of is clothes. And she said, come live with me, save money, and basically like I will move my life around to accommodate your needs. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I can't do that. And she insisted, and we talked about it over time. And she really was offering this to me. And she was so sincere about the offering of it and really made me feel like it would be her honor to help me in this way. And it wouldn't put her out at all. She's just like, come on, I get home super late. And then I just go to sleep. She's like, I don't need my apartment. Like all the stuff I do is like out and about. She's a very social butterfly, like at the theater or at somebody else's house. She was like, it truly won't put me out at all. And also the fact that it would help you thrills me. So like, let's do it. So I did that. I moved out of my place to move into Rose's room. And then she took the couch, and we lived like that for a few years. And it was so helpful. I mean, going from I think I said we were paying $1,800. It was like we were paying about that total. So I think it was like $875 per month in rent, which sounds low, but also just remember my student loan payments were $800 a month every month always. So that's like another rent payment that I had to kind of concede for. Or I had to, move things around to accommodate. And so this cut in expenses took so much pressure off of me. And then also I got to build a deeper relationship with Rose, which has just been so life affirming. I mean, she was there through my decision to retire, because she would see me come home after working like so much overtime in the classroom to get everything done, because you have to as a teacher. It's basically all unpaid overtime. Is your job is 50% unpaid overtime and 50% like how much time you're actually paid for. But like, you cannot get everything you need to get done within the hours that you're paid for at all. It's not like you're paid hourly, but also like if teachers were paid overtime, then maybe the compensation would be fair. That's all I'm going to say. I'm in the classroom till nightfall several nights out of the week. And I would come home some days just crying to her and talking about how the system was preventing me from, successfully giving all the kids what they needed, and how difficult it is to have 4 grade levels in one class, and how it's like actually impossible to fully educate all of them. And then realizing like, am I part of the problem? Like, is this all a ruse? Like, is special ed even what it purports to be, which is to get kids ready to go back into mainstreaming, into regular ed? That's the point of it. But it's set up so that you're not able to do that, because you have 4 different grade levels, a classroom full of 4 different grade levels of kids, and you have to hit all the standards in each grade level every day in every subject. It's literally impossible. And because I believed in it so much and I was so passionate about my students, I just stayed until 7 p.m. every night to make it possible, type thing. And it was very stressful. And then there's also, the variables of like what type of day you're going to have, because you're working with kids who are really struggling emotionally, let's say. That's a big pull. That's a lot of it. And I remember having, one of a dozen conversations with her through tears about the struggle of that position. And I just remember so clearly one day she said, this isn't tenable. It's just not. And I just needed somebody else to say that. And it kind of opened my brain. And that wasn't the reason that I chose to retire. It wasn't like all I needed to hear, but it definitely it was one domino, right, in the row of falling dominoes, where I was like, I don't think this is where I end up. I'm grateful to have done this, but I want to like launch from here. And, being inspired to make documentary films came through other avenues, and meeting my documentary film heroes and him inspiring me to make the film I wanted to make. Like, a lot of things factored into it. But Rose was there. And one thing that I really loved about her friendship was that she was able to meet me on all levels. That's one thing that I really cherish in people. We can be funny and stupid and talk about shame, or I guess a better way to say it is like, we can be funny and stupid and also talk about shame and pain. And she's going to meet you where you're at, no matter what the subject is. And she's going to empower you. And also, she's honest. She says no when she means no. She tells me when I'm doing something stupid. She tells me when I'm interested in somebody who's love bombing me. She's honest with me as well. And I really, really cherish that. Like, if I'm up to some bullshit or I need to be called out, she also will do that. Love that so much. I had gone to, so Rose is from Seattle, and she took me there one time, probably about 12 years ago, over, I think it was the Christmas holiday, or I think it was the Thanksgiving holiday, if I remember correctly. She took me there to stay with her mom and the man her mom was married to at the time. And that was the first time I met her mom. Her mom was a teacher, a high school teacher at the time. So we talked a little bit about that. And mostly I spent time with Rose. Rose took me to Puget Sound, and I had a really immensely strong response to Puget Sound. I don't know if you've ever been to Seattle, but the water there is special. It just feels different to me. The vibe in Seattle is very, like, I love the energy of Seattle. And she took me to Puget Sound on a really rainy day. And this was in the, it was in the fall, in the season of the sticks, as Noah says. And it was gray and it was drizzly. And she took me to a little park that opened up to the sound. And I had never seen Puget Sound. I had heard of Puget Sound. Also didn't even necessarily understand what a sound was at the time. I thought we were at the one park that sort of hit the sound. I didn't understand that the sound was just like the entire body of water, and that's what it's called there, because it's like has like a different opening. Let me look up the Puget Sound connects the Pacific with the Strait of Juan de Fuca to the west and the George Strait to the north. So I was so unaware of the world. I had never even heard of a sound before. But she drives me up to this one area of Puget Sound, a little beach, and there are huge fallen trees, leafless fallen trees, and the whole sky is gray and it's drizzling. And I was overwhelmed with peace and like beauty. I felt that Puget Sound on this gray, rainy day was the most special place I had ever been. It just felt so full of, it was both like full of energy and devoid of it. Maybe that's the best way to explain it. It felt like the absence of chaos, and it was just a symbol of peace to me. Also, overcast skies, gray skies, and rain make me really happy. I've done a lot of thinking about that. I think it's because it's just the opposite of what I grew up in, which was the hot, scalding desert sun. And so rain and gray skies just feel safe. It doesn't remind me of my childhood, and it feels new, right? I stood on a fallen log overlooking Puget Sound for so long that Rose went to go back and sit in the car. And she fully was like, I am going to go sit in the car because it's been like 12 minutes and there's nothing to see, but like you have your time. I love this for you. So she goes and sat in the car. And I remember I played Spanish Sahara by Foles in my headphones. I just was like, that's going to hit right now. And it did. It was like the perfect song to play. Go listen to that song in headphones if you haven't heard it. It's now a song that whenever I go somewhere new, I play it to just like lay that song over the experience, because it's such a gorgeous, like haunting song. But I will say it made the most sense at Puget Sound on that gray, rainy day. And I have thought about that day, and I didn't stay for long. We stayed maybe a total of like 20 minutes, but I've never stopped thinking about that or talking about it. And so much so that I remember I used to say, you know how in Donnie Darko, they say that like a famous linguist said that cellar door were the two most beautiful words in the English language. I used to say Puget Sound is my cellar door. And I didn't ever really like analyze like what was it about that place that felt so amazing to me. But after this last year in Washington, I think it was just Washington calling to me. That place is heaven for me. It is so beautiful and has so many elements that I've never gotten to experience long term, and it has changed me fundamentally as a person. I do see myself possibly living there for a time in the future, perhaps. I love the Pacific Northwest so much. I also want to go to Europe though. So but the fact that I now, because of this past year, and I'll get to what happened in this past year, the fact that I now have a place to go to even in my mind where I'm like, oh my God, I can go back for holidays. Like I know that Seattle and Edmonds specifically, which is where I spent time with Robbie, I know that that's there, and it's the most beautiful place I've ever spent time, and I'm welcomed there, and I know people there because I became friends with Robbie's friends too, who also happen to be teachers. And so of course I can relate to them and talk to them. I actually got to know two of Robbie's really close friends, both of whom are teachers. We like would go out to dinner in Edmonds together. I house sat for one of them for an extended period of time over Christmas. That was the house with all the snow, where I was like taking pictures of the homemade cobbler on the snow. If you follow me on SELFWIFE, like Seattle really, or Washington, Edmonds, Seattle, Capitol Hill, like really opened its arms up to me and was like, Ani, you are safe here. You are welcomed here. And here are all these opportunities to feel safe and welcomed. So this time around, when I was telling Rose what was happening to my life in 2021, beginning in September, just a series of catastrophic events that I've not talked about publicly yet, I said, I have to get the fuck out of here. I can't be present for another landmine exploding again. I said, I got to get the fuck out of here, and I don't know where to go. But I know, I wrote this in my journal, I need to go somewhere where there are trees. I need to be surrounded by trees, and I need to be alone, and I need to heal. And I also need to not pay for it because I was about to quit my job. Like, How is that even possible? How is that going to happen? I don't know, but that's what I need. I wrote it in my journal and I told my friends, like, this is what I need and I'm looking for it. Rose says, oh, guess what? Travis, who I had met on the previous trip to Seattle and became friends with, and Travis and I really bonded over being Taylor Swift fans and have stayed in touch about that subject. And it's like truly delightful. Travis is absolutely wonderful. He and his girlfriend, Kat, happened to be at the same time I was going to be leaving Los Angeles, going out of town for a month, and they needed a house sitter and a cat sitter. They needed a house sitter and a cat sitter. And I was like, dun, da, 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 great, right? So I go to Capitol Hill, posted a lot about that. If you follow me, you saw. Loved exploring that city, being completely alone for the first time in years. It was incredible because I had my solo apartment for a couple years, but I could not hold on to that for very long, especially like after I gave up even my teacher's salary and went into freelance. I was like, okay, I got to go back to the roommate life. And I've been extraordinarily lucky in a lot of instances with the roommate life. But with what I had gone through in LA, I was just like, I need to get my own head back on and hear my own thoughts, And so I have an entire month in Capitol Hill in an apartment all to myself with the cutest fucking cat ever named Pepper. And I posted her too. She made biscuits on me and I loved her. And it was wonderful. It was so great. And then one day Rose was coming into town. Rose at this point had been living in Peru. And she was like, oh, I'm coming to town. Like, I'm going to pick you up at Travis's. We're going to take what do they call it there? We're going to take the train up to my mom's, which is in Edmonds, which is like 25 minutes from Capitol Hill-ish. And, we're just going to like go to dinner and hang out with her. I said, absolutely great. Hadn't seen her since the time we visited over Thanksgiving, and I fell in love with Puget Sound. And I became so close with Roberta, Rose's mom. She was teaching a population of kids that I am trained to work with. Every single one of her students has an IEP, but she has a general education teaching background. She's taught film, she's taught high school, I'm pretty sure she's taught English. She's taught a lot of subjects, but she hadn't taught middle schoolers, all who have an IEP. But guess who had? Me. So it was this really great, like, symbiotic timing sort of trip where she was in this new environment and needed strategies for working with this new population of students, and I needed something to take my mind off of the fact that my life had been burned to the ground and needed to heal. And I also love helping so much. You guys know I love providing support. I love sharing knowledge, especially when it comes to kids, because it's like, that's the thing. I know more about teaching kids and working with kids than I do about most other things in life. So it was like such an honor for me to be able to share that. And Robbie and I just like clicked on like a familial level in the same way that Rose and I did. Robbie is such a loving, warm, open-hearted woman. I mean, she, of course, Rose was formed by her. I was blown away with like just the level of sort of like love she offered me even in our first lunch, me, Robbie, and Rose. I just felt at home, even though this was my only second time meeting Robbie. Well, Robbie ended up coming up. I was coming to the end of my house sitting stay with Travis and winging it, flying by the seat of my pants. Did not know where I was going to go next. Just knew I couldn't go back to LA. And Rose, but I had, I think, maybe a week left at Travis's. So I go back to Travis's, living my best life, hanging out, walking to the grocery store, cooking, playing with Pepper, watching movies. And Rose says, hey, my mom has a camp for her students coming up where she has to like be out of the house a lot. And she has a little dog named Tom, not Tom Tom. Tom Bombadil is his name, which is a character from Lord of the Rings. If you know, I haven't seen it, but I did get the lowdown. And she said, I've posted Tom a lot too. He's that little cutie that I would take on walks all the time and cuddle with. And he would lay on my butt. If I would lay on my stomach, he would come and put his snout in between my butt crack and just like make the perfect little pillow for his face. So cute. Love him. Rose said, hey, my mom needs to kind of be away from the house more often than usual in this next coming week. Do you want to go and stay there next and just watch Tom for her? That would really help. I was like, oh my God, absolutely. Amazing. That's the next place I am going. And I love that it's helpful for her because it's also helpful for me. So I go and I just don't leave. We end up bonding on such a deep level that she's like, stay here. Like, I have a guest room. You're healing from stuff. She was also healing from stuff as well. We bonded about healing so much, and we bonded about the types of relationships that we're going to allow in our lives and stuff. And she just showed me a type of motherly care, because she's one of my closest friends' moms, that I've never received in my life. And it was interesting to experience it and go through it, because once she said, like, stay longer, I love having you here and you're more than welcome, like, please stay through the holidays type thing, I absolutely took her up on it. I love Edmonds even more than Seattle. That was the thing. Once I went to Edmonds, I was like, oh my God, this is even more of what I love, because it's like small town, a quick little jaunt through the tiny mini little town on the way to the Sound, a different beach than the one I had been to prior. But we also did go visit that beach specifically because I told Robbie I had never stopped thinking about it, and she drove me past there. And I found out too that on that beach, there's this like art house that's totally painted blue, and they do residencies and they pay artists to go live there for like 6 months to a year, and you get a monthly allowance and you get to make your art. But the stipulation is like you have to have like a doors open at all times policy, and people from the city can like come in and see what you're doing. And I wasn't ready for that. But Seattle is such like they really value their artists in that city, and that was really cool. But anyway, Edmonds like cracked my heart wide open. Edmonds is like kind of like, you know how I love going up to Amador to visit Ginger and Julia, the smallest incorporated city in California. It has that vibe, but it's definitely a big city. Population is definitely not 212. Let's see what the population is. Population of Edmonds is 42,758 as of 2021. 42,758. So, you know, fairly populated, but just like the houses are surrounded by a forest. Robbie's backyard is the forest. There is a creek running through her backyard. I would just go out her front yard, put little Tom on a leash, walk half a block, and then enter into the actual forest, which is carved out and has pathways that guide you through it. I walked through it in the snow. It was just the most magical experience. And living with Robbie for that extended period of time healed so many of my mother wounds. But before I even got to the healing, I was racked with anxiety that Robbie had sort of like not known what she was doing when she invited me to stay longer. And my fear was that she was going to wake up someday or in the middle of the day, on any given day, she was going to come into the guest room and say, actually, I changed my mind. Can you please get the fuck out of my house? And my fear about that is based in that, like, I've had so many people in my life switch up on me. And it has, yes, started in childhood where my mom would switch up on me several times a day. So you never know what's going to happen. But also, as you know, I've sought out relationships like that with partners and with friends who just one day all of a sudden decide that they're going to show me that they're an entirely different person than the person they've been performing up until that day. So I was racked with that anxiety. I felt simultaneously so safe and so fortunate that this opportunity for safety and comfort during like one of the most painful things I had gone through was available to me. But I think I talked to Rose about it. I talked to a couple of friends about how, like, I'm so afraid though. I feel like this is a trick. Like, I feel like it's too good to be true. And she's going to switch up on me and kick me out. Never happened. Not only did it not happen, she just showed me so much love and compassion constantly. She cared about what I had to say. She cared about my feedback. She cared about what I was working on. She also wanted to share her loves and passions with me. So it was reciprocal. She was showing me, because she used to teach film to high schoolers. So she was teaching me film literacy and how to watch classic films. One of her favorites is Strangers on a Train. So we watched that through the lens of like, let's, dissect the visual motifs. Let's see like what the director is doing with this shot and this angle and the shoe. What does that shoe in this shot signify to you? Like, she taught me how to really dig into a film and see what the creators of that film are doing beyond just the script, which I've always only ever focused on Well, that's not necessarily true, but when I first started movies, I just was focused on the acting and the script. And then I became more interested in details of shots and like set design and things like that. But I had never, ever been shown anything about like visual motifs or symbolism or foreshadowing or anything. Like, in fact, when people can watch a movie prior to staying with Robbie and learning from her, when people would watch a movie and know, like, by the end of the first act, how it was going to end, baffled me. Like, how on earth could you possibly know? Because the director is like planting clues throughout the film. And I've even had experiences now where I'll watch a film, specifically in the horror genre, and I'm like, oh, I know what's going to fucking happen because of that fucking word on a sign in the background. Like, very cool. So that's all because of Robbie. I can't tell you how many nights Robbie and I spent. I would like make us cocktails. We would sit on the couch and just watch movies for hours and like pause and dissect what we just watched. What a gift to have somebody to do that with. Love it. But then she also let me introduce her to stuff. Like, I made her a Swiftie. I made her such a Swiftie that I had her crying. I think we were watching the Long Pond sessions and I had already done like all of the groundwork laying. We were watching Long Pond sessions and I turned and Robbie's crying. She's like, she's such an amazing artist. And the fact that people can't see that, it's just misogyny. Like, there's nothing else that it is. And I was like, yes. Like, the fact that she cared about my interests too. I've never experienced that from a parental figure. Obviously, she's not my mom, but she's my really good friend's mom. Rose is my best friend. She's my best friend's mom, right? So being with my best friend's mom, like, it felt there was that extra layer of safety. And also just small things like when I would cook for her, or even when I would just cook for myself and then be like, do you want some of this? She would just be like, oh my God, I can't believe you made this. This is so, yes, of course I want some. She'd eat it. Oh my God, this is amazing. Like, how do you do it? Just like constantly complimenting me. Never experienced that before. Like from a mother figure at all. I'm used to being nagged and criticized, but with her, it was just like she wanted to encourage me. She also was encouraging me to be more creative when I was there. She has an extensive art room in her garage, like just every type of art supply that you need. She's got it in a bin, and she's got everything you need to like make mosaics, embroidery, and you know that you know I mean, you guys might know. I have a bright green beanie that has patches all over it. She's the one that encouraged me to do that because I got the beanie and then I hated the color and they wouldn't let me send it back. And she was like, let's cover it with patches. And so she was constantly like taking me out into the garage and being like, oh, here's a new area of my art supplies. Take all of them, make whatever you want. I was making paintings up there. She was like, oh, I can teach you how to like resin. Oh, like resin art. She was like, oh my God, I'll teach you. Her creativity is just like absolutely inspiring, and her house is beautiful. And I just like, it was so wonderful to be able to use the kitchen and light candles and play soft music and be there with Tom and watch movies and drink cocktails and go into the backyard. And I will say over time, I just worked through that anxiety of this is all going to fall away. Like, she's going to come in and she's going to make me go home. Like, I worked through that with exposure, because every day I would have that fleeting thought of like, oh no, is today the day where it all collapses? She would do something even more kind. She was also constantly like wanting to make sure I was so comfortable, so concerned with my comfort. Like, always saying, like, she would come home from work and she would say, okay, now just so you know, the car is yours. Take it. Do you need some money? Like, what do you need? Like, how can I make your stay here more wonderful? She did that the entire several months that I stayed with her. Just like, she's such a giver in the same way that Rose is. And what's really nice is that in my relationships, I am too. And it is hard. It has been rare for me to find somebody who's like equal parts a giver. And it's also hard to adjust to. Like, that was part of what was hard to adjust. I'm like, I'm not used to this. It must be a trick, right? I will tell you that I think, and then I almost burned her house down. And the way that she handled it changed me. So I was making, I don't even remember I think I was about to make soup. I didn't end up making it because this happened. But it was a type of soup where I was going to need to chop maybe like butternut squash or something. And you start by putting the large pot on the stove and you put a little drop of oil or however much oil, right? And then as soon as the oil is heated, you're going to throw in the stuff to saute. I'm heating up the oil in the big tall pot, and I'm over here watching a video on how to properly slice an onion. And I turn around to the sink and chopping the onion, and I think to myself, I think it's time to go check on the oil to see if it's ready. I walk over to the pot. I look in, and the very moment I look into the pot, it erupts into flame. So my instinct, and also again, like everything I know about cooking, I've taught myself. I did take a restaurant occupations class in high school because I used to think I wanted to own a restaurant. And so when there was a restaurant occupations class at my high school, I was like, put me in, coach. But we had a terrible teacher. The only thing I remember learning was how to make chicken Alfredo, which is great, but I don't remember learning anything actually about cooking. And God knows my parents don't cook. So I know what I know, and there's a lot of shit I don't know. What I didn't know in that moment is that what had just transpired on the stove was a grease fire. And the worst thing you can do to a grease fire is introduce water into the situation. I didn't know that. I saw fire, my brain goes water. So the fire is raging. Mind you, it's on the stovetop and the fan is maybe a couple inches above the flame. The flames are pretty tall. So first instinct, I go to the sink, I grab a glass of water, I fill it all the way up, I turn around, and I splash a little bit of it. Like I try to kind of like splash it to make it into the pot, and I miss. I fall short of the pot, and I'm kind of like cocking my arm back to splash it more. And Robbie very calmly walks out of her bedroom. And in that moment, right before I'm about to try it for the second time and actually make the water into the pot, she walks out, sees the fire, and says, "Oh no." Walks over to me. She says, "Go ahead, open that back door." Very calm. Okay. I'm freaking out. She is so calm. She says, "Oh, go ahead and open that back door." She takes the pot. She gets a couple like towels, picks up the pot. She slowly walks it into the backyard, and then she says, "Will you grab me a pan?" So I grab a pan. She takes the pan. She slowly puts it over the pot, and she extinguishes the flame. And then I start crying, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, how did that happen? Everything happened so quickly. Like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This is a couple months, maybe even 3 months into like me staying there. I would need to look at the calendar to know, but I had been there for a substantial amount of time, so long that I had like gotten over the fear that she was going to change her mind and kick me out. Well, this happened, and I was just certain that this was it. Like, okay, I made a huge mistake that she rushed in and saved me from, but could have literally cost her house. And I also was like preemptively, like, I understand, like, I'll go. I'm so, so, so sorry. I put you in danger. I put Tom in danger. I put your well-being in danger. So I'm like in tears and profusely apologizing. And she's just like, "Sweetheart, it's okay. You're okay. It's okay. Come on. Let's go sit down." We go and sit down. I'm like, "No, it's not okay. Like, I don't know how that happened. I'm so sorry. Like, it was so quick. Like, what happened even?" I'm like spiraling. And she's like, "Well," and so like not once did she show me that she was ruffled. If she was, she did not put that on me in that moment. She could see that I already was. And so she maintained the calm presence. This is something that I've done for other people, and I've rarely had it done for me. Rose does it for me, but like I've never had a mother figure do it. She says, she calms me down, and then she says, "So what just happened, that was a grease fire. And the thing about grease fires is that you never want to introduce water, because it will make it, like, it would have made that flame like 3 or 4 times bigger, and it definitely would have burned the house down." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Oh my God, are you joking me? I was so close. I had tried once. I'm like recounting the whole thing. And now I'm like more worked up. I'm like, oh my God. Like, so not only did that happen and that was dangerous enough, but I narrowly, like I was milliseconds away from making it a disaster and also it probably would have like blown into my face. Like I could have been permanently scarred from this experience also. And I mean, we would have gotten out, the living creatures in the house would have gotten out, me, her, and Tom. But like, uh, obviously, like it would have been the absolute worst thing in the world. So now I'm apologizing even more. I'm like, I am so stupid. Here's the thing. I was like, I won't cook in your kitchen anymore. Like I will go home. Like I know that this is totally unacceptable. I should have known that and I didn't. I'm too irresponsible to be cooking. Like I revoke my own privileges. And she was just like, what? No, you're fine. She was like, she said, this is how people learn. Not everybody knows, exactly what they're doing. People learn from mistakes and you're learning now. Now you know that. And I said that's very sweet of you, but like I still really feel like I put you in too much danger and I don't think I'm safe to be around. And I said like the fact that I almost could have burned your house down, like that's just way too much for me. And she just said, yeah, but that's just not the lesson. That's not the lesson that you needed to learn today. You didn't need that lesson, so it didn't happen. She says, it's fine, sweetheart. You're okay. Everything's fine. And I'll never forget that for as long as I live because I've never received treatment like that, especially not from an authority figure in a situation that's dangerous or that is high stress. The one thing I think of in my own childhood is I had gotten some roller blades, I think, and I must have been around 8 or 9. My mom said, don't rollerblade in the house, or the rule was don't rollerblade in the house, I guess. But I rollerbladed in the house and I rolled through the kitchen behind her and fell and like knocked the wind out of myself, like fell on my back. And already when you fall and you're a kid and you get the wind knocked out of you, like that's the lesson. Like you learned it. There you go. Like, and as a person who's worked with so many children, I've had obviously children hurt themselves at school before. And even like when kids will like lean back in their chair and fall, I've never been the teacher that's like, that's exactly why, because I'm like, okay, well, do you see now why? I don't try to like add to the pain of whatever the natural consequences of their actions. But my mom's not that way. And I fell, knocked the wind out of myself, struggling to breathe. And she turned around and was livid and started screaming at me and said, this is exactly why I told you not to do this. You never listen to me. This is what you get. And she got down and she like violently untied both rollerblades, yanked them off my feet and threw them across the kitchen to the back wall. So like screaming and like throwing, and the wind is knocked out of me and I'm terrified, and it just made it so much worse. And that's not the only time something like that happened, but like that's a good example of like the imprint of what I expect to happen if I make a mistake or do something wrong. And I honestly, like, even now, I feel that she, in this situation, Robbie actually even had a right to be upset with me. I don't think my mom had a right to treat me that way when I was a child, like trying out my new rollerblades and accidentally falling. But as an adult, cooking in somebody else's kitchen who doesn't even know that you can't introduce water to a grease fire, I think she was well within her right to be like, yeah, unfortunately, we're just not going to be able to cook anymore. But she didn't. She didn't take anything away from me. She didn't berate me. She just calmed me down, comforted me, hugged me, told me she loved me, told me everything was going to be okay, and just said, like, this is how people learn. Everything's fine. And it like changed me. Like it healed another part of my nervous system. And to have been on the receiving end of something like that, and also going back in my mind to all the times I've been that person for somebody else, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want and that's what I deserve. That felt incredible. I didn't know that that was possible. I didn't know adults could behave this way when they're upset or scared or worked up. And I deserve that. That's exactly the type of treatment that I want. And I'm able to, because I've like had, and I just also want to say, like, every day spent there with her, I healed mother wounds. I healed issues with my own self-esteem. I healed issues with my own self-doubt about my capabilities. Like the stuff that Rose in her friendship really helps me work on, like her mom helped me work on every single day in a setting that felt like home. And there's no words to describe how much that means to me. How can I ever? And then also, here's another thing. Robbie speaks about my stay there in the same way for her, like that my influence when it comes to healing and like self-care and stuff really helped her, and that she learned a lot from me. So it was also reciprocated. Like we both so deeply loved and cherished, bit my tongue, cherished that time we spent together, and like talk about it so fondly because it revved both of us up. It recharged both of us. It comforted both of us. It helped both of us heal. And, because we talked about a lot of deep shit too. We really got to know each other and supported each other. And now that I've had that experience in a home setting for an extended period of time with a mother figure, I'm like, that's my baseline requirement. Because it's also because I provide those, I create those environments too. So I need people, especially people that I choose to have in my life, to treat me with dignity and respect and patience. I deserve that. I give that out. I deserve it. And this was and also I just want to speak to people say like, oh, you seek out the love that you think you deserve. You enter into the relationships that you think you deserve. I would love to combat that. I don't think that that's the whole story. You seek out relationships that you know. You are drawn to what's familiar. I had never experienced just a mother figure telling me I was worthy and capable and complimenting me and thanking me for my contributions around the house every day and showing me love and care and caring about my experience, wanting to make me comfortable, wanting to make my stay better. I had never had any of that stuff. Now that I know what that's like and I've had it and I have felt it and I could visualize it because I've experienced it, well, now that's what I want and that's what I'll look for. But I also think like a way to amend that sort of like colloquialism of you get the type of love you think you deserve, I think you get the type of love that you've had modeled to you. And if you haven't had something healthier or more beneficial or that feels better modeled to you, you probably have a hard time believing that it even exists. I didn't know that I could feel that safe and cared for and regarded and appreciated by a mother figure. I didn't know it was available in the world. And now that I do, now I know that I want that. And now I know that I deserve that because I watched somebody, Robbie, so freely give it to me as if it was her pleasure. In the same way that Rose has so freely given me just incredible friendship for years and years as if it's her pleasure. Just yesterday, she was helping me through something very triggering for me. And I at the end of the conversation, I said, thank you so much. And she responded, it's my pleasure, dude. And it is like, I could cry. I know that I'm not a burden for these two people, for Rose and Roberta. And not only that, I know that I'm a gift to them and they are also a gift to me. To have that level of reciprocation, to know that I'm wanted in a space that I also want to be in, and to have that level of like friendship and support and just love given to me so consistently over time as well is just, there is not, both of those women don't know how to judge someone. It's just not in them. I can go to them in my lowest moments with the things I'm most ashamed of in my life, and they're going to remind me that I deserve better than that. And it's a brain altering, nervous system altering gift. And I hold Rose and Roberta up as emblematic of how I want my relationships to feel. And another thing about that is, like, obviously not everybody can be like those two people are to me. And I don't require like that level. I'm not going to like require everybody in my life to hold my hand through anything, like, you know, at all. But now that I've experienced it from two women who I love and respect and look up to so much, and they also feel that same way about me, I'm like, yeah, I don't want anything less than love and mutual respect, than support, than honesty, than levity when it's appropriate and depth when it's appropriate. You know, Robbie and I had several like meaningful conversations in which we're both crying. We're crying from recognition of one another. We're crying from the pain of what we're talking about. We're crying because we are seeing beauty in one another and, you know, expressing that beauty, and crying because we both needed that so much. Like, and now having Washington in my mind, and then also getting to know Roberta's friends was so wonderful. Her friend Jeanette, who I got to house sit for, just one city over from Edmonds, maybe two. No, maybe one. Was also like, love her friend Jeanette, went out to lunch with her, spent like 4 hours talking about kids, because like I can talk to people way older than me about kids, which is like a very cool way to connect with. I love women who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I actually have a lot of like older female friends in all of those age brackets. And I love learning from them. And I also love being able to connect with them on the subject of children. But also Robbie inviting me into her friendships. Like, you know, when she would go out to happy hour with her two longtime best friends, she's like, Ani, you have to come. Like, they would love to meet you. And then like adds me to their little text chat. And it's like, where we go for happy hour tonight, ladies. I loved it. It was so healing for me. It was so heart filling. And now in my mind, I have a safe place to go to. A beautiful place, Washington, Edmonds specifically. That's where I go to in my mind. If I'm having a hard time, I envision myself in Edmonds. I envision myself at Robbie's house, being cared for and regarded and seen and loved. I felt so seen by her. She and Rose are both really good at being like, you're amazing, and here are all the things that are amazing about you. And they just do it because that's the type of people they are, because they love finding beauty in the world, you know? And so they love finding beauty in the people that they love. And it's just so wonderful to be on the receiving end of it. And I needed it so much, so specifically this past year. And it was life changing. And knowing that I can go back to Washington for the holidays, because I spent the holidays with Rose's whole family, who I love, and who, you know, I had known her aunt and uncle and her cousins from my last trip. So it was like I had already met them. So there was like a level of, definitely a level of comfort for like me being there for their Christmas holiday. And also just because I'm so close to Rose, you know, I felt very welcomed, and that was beautiful. But knowing, like, I've always loved Christmas, but I've loved the idea of Christmas, but hated the actual reality of Christmas, because being with my family and my extended family is not fun. It's awful. And so like now having a place to go where it's wonderful. Her family Christmases are out of my wildest dreams. And oh my God, that emergency alert just went off. Did you read that people think it's going to turn vaxxed folks into zombies? All right, well, I'm a zombie now, so I do have to go do my zombie stuff. This is long, so I'm going to wrap it up. Chosen family is so important. I have been so blessed this past year with examples of what I want for the rest of my life in my experiences with my chosen family, specifically via Rose and Roberta. I have seen like I've been working on knowing my worth. I now know what it feels like to be regarded as worthy in a relationship, thanks to them. And like I said, the best thing about it, I mean, Rose says the same stuff to me that I say about her, like that I make her feel these ways as well. Could there be anything better than to just like meet each other's needs and just have each other's back? Rose and Robbie are my family. I feel like they've changed like the chemicals in my body, and I'm building new patterns based on situations like this, based on connections like this, based on safe places and chosen family like this. And I want to say too, I have been on this journey of like finding who my people are in the world since I was, let's say, 25. I think that that's a safe number. That's like around the time I started working on healing. And it's not easy. You'll even meet people that you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely my chosen family. And you'll find out, you know, sooner or later that that's not the case and they're not who you thought that they were. That happens too. But I'm so fortunate that I have these two women in my life. They have made me stronger. They've made me more confident. They've helped me see my worth by treating me like they know what it is, you know? Because there's a lot of people can, especially narcissists, they can like see what's great about you and list it and make you feel very, very loved for a solid 2 months. And then they're going to dig the knife in, you know? Not everybody who makes you feel seen is your person. Not everybody who makes you feel seen and loved in the beginning ends up being chosen family or somebody you can have a relationship with. You do have to be discerning. And I have been learning that. And I've had several people, like even in the past, that I've called my chosen mothers for a limited time. And then I'm like, maybe that title was a little bit too overzealous with the family they were born into, if it's abusive or if it's something that, you know, causes you pain, or if you've gone no contact or whatever. Chosen family is your lifeblood. I think it's different for everybody. How you meet people is just unique to you and your life story. But I know that even if you haven't experienced it yet, I can say this now. Also, please remember, I'm 38. If you're listening, I think like a lot of people who listen to me are a lot younger. Things change in time. Things happen in time. This, like me having a place to go to in my mind that feels safe and like home to me, just happened this past year in my life for the very first time. And so don't give up yet if you haven't found your people in the world. But I think finding your people in the world, finding those safe people that show you what it's like to actually be treated well long term, and who constantly remind you of your value and your worth rather than constantly criticizing you and reminding you of everything you're doing wrong. That is life. Finding these safe people is life. And I just honestly really wanted to do a little love letter to Rose and Robbie. You've changed my life. You've healed me. I love you both so much. And I am so much better because you exist in my life. Thank you. Here's to more. Can't wait to go visit Washington again in the future. Can't wait to go back to Puget Sound. I think if you haven't met people that you can consider your chosen family yet, but you feel like you really need to, if you are a spiritual person, and in my definition of that word, that just means like, you know, you have a soul, ask your guides, your angels, whatever the words you feel comfortable using, ask your spirit team, ask your higher self, ask God, whatever that like force of greater energy or magic is in your life, ask that force to guide you toward your people. That's what you can do. They know best. I don't know how to guide you toward your people. And if you don't know how to find your people, like ask for help. Ask the ether for help, you know. Big proponent of that. I used to be a Christian, so I'm weird with like the language that I use, and it's also constantly changing. Like just recently I got comfortable again with using the word angels, but I believe that you have a soul. Your soul is connected to something way bigger than this physical realm, and that you do have support and guidance from things that you cannot see, people you cannot see, entities you cannot see, spirits that have passed on that you cannot see. Ask them for help, ask for guidance, and follow your intuition too. Like if you're like, oh, maybe I should start this sort of community idea, or maybe I should start or join a book club, or maybe I should, get into taking that pottery class, like do stuff like that. That's how you go out into the world, expand with an open heart, and draw people toward you that are like-minded. Like get out there and experience something new. And if you're doing that with the intention of like, I want to meet my people, it'll happen over time. It's taken me the last 10 to 15 years, I've really been figuring out like who actually are my people versus, just like being friends with anyone who's available. Because when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to choose my own friends. I wasn't allowed to choose anything. I didn't have control over my own life. So as an adult out free in the world, I was like, yay, I'm in charge now. I choose everyone. And that'll only get you so far. So now I am fortunate to be like honing that desire and like choosing people based on higher standards, developed standards. And what's also cool is like a year ago, I didn't even know Edmonds, Washington existed. And now it is my favorite place I've ever been. And I go to it in my mind on a daily basis. And it has just like revved me up so much. So you never know what's coming next. You never know what type of, new and healing experience lies around the corner for you. And all of these things fell into my life when I stood up for myself, said no, made hard decisions and sacrifices to center myself. It was right after I did that in big and hard ways that the universe was like, good job. Here's some safety. Here are an endless string of house sitting opportunities for an entire year in beautiful, safe places for you to go, be around trees, not pay because you're house sitting, and heal. The very thing I wrote in my journal that I wanted to have happen. And I think it must have just been, because that was like the quickest and most intense manifestation I've ever experienced. I think it just must have been writing that down and also taking actual action in my own life to like, I guess, let the universe know, like, I'm serious about centering myself. I will not bend myself into a pretzel to appease a maniac ever again. Like, and I'm so hell-bent on saying no to that I will literally leave everything behind just to go focus on myself, and prepare to do that for the rest of my life. And I just have felt so much support rush in. So for whatever that's worth, take whatever stands out to you in that story, whatever like bumps for you and makes you feel like, oh yeah, that makes me think of this other thing that I want to do, or I want to find my chosen family, or whatever this brings up for you in your own brain and body. Follow it. The road might be rocky. It has been for me, but there are these moments of peace and calm and healing that are available to you. And I'm so grateful, and I can't wait to see what's next. And also, I am so happy with where I am right now. Thank you so much for listening. If you got anything from this, leave me a review on wherever you listen to this podcast. It looks like most people listen on Apple, but it's also on Spotify, it's on Amazon Music, and the videos are on Patreon. Thanks for listening. Hope it helped in some small way. And I'll see you next week. Allow the ASMR Glockenspiel to lull you into a happy trance. Okay, bye.